that they were going to flip over and play backwards and process. And then the day I was supposed to go down there to work with them on the sounds, I couldn't go, and then Roderick got to go, and then the credits went by, his name was on the screen.
So they used them?
Yeah, in fact, there's only, in the movie, there's only one sound from the game that survived at its same, and when the guy walks on top of where the jails are and smacks the staff down, that's the fire shot from Two Chase Tunnel. That's the only sound that stayed, that wasn't flipped over or played backwards, sped up, or changed. But they were recording for about 3 days, recording sounds off of games. So it's a good question why they didn't talk to us about games. Well, we definitely, when they approached us, I remember that. Yeah?
What would you say is the weirdest thing, most off-the-wall thing that was attempted that never actually saw the light of day at Atari?
I gotta tell you, maybe not your thing, but right after Star Wars came out, most people at Atari loved them sitting the two guns and they're shooting after they were escaping from the Death Star. And they said, we can do that game. So they built this giant plastic bubble with a seat that moved, and they were going to project. Do you remember this? And this was in 1265. So they built this thing inside, and the seat was going to move, and you would fire at these things. And they were all ready to put it out and test, and then they measured it, and it didn't fit out the door. And they were actually discussing taking one of these tilt-up wall pieces and cutting a hole in it to get it outside.
Well, there's a predecessor. There's a predecessor twin to that Al will remember. The first 8-player video driving game we built, in the 800, and it was built up and we shipped it to Chicago, and we were supposed to have it go into the, get it up the freight elevator. It's the night of the show, go to the suite, and it was claimed it had 2 double doors. It only had a single door. So in the corridor, we took the whole frigging thing apart into pieces, put it inside, and then had to rebuild it that night.
So the Star Wars game, they did the same thing. They took it apart, and I think they were putting it on the truck outside, and the bubble fell out of the truck and cracked it too. And we all said, "This is a bad idea."
It was dangerous.
It was. Oh man, that seat flew around. I wouldn't ride it. What about the Periscope game?
Oh, U-boat or sub U-boat?
Did that ever get?
Phil Kearney's one. It was.
Wolfpack.
Wolfpack.
It's a cool game, but did that ever get produced?
Not many.
I think there was 1 or 2.
That was.
I mean, it cost $1 zillion to build, and it didn't earn that much more than a regular game, but it was neat. It's a real conning tower with a periscope and a railing around it.
It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. Just couldn't make money.
What about subs? There's another.
That had the sonar suite that you could.
But it was like a 2-screen, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Something interesting about cabinets is there's always plenty of people, coming into Atari or Williams or Stern saying, I've got this great cabinet idea, it'll change the face of coin-operated games. And cabinets never really did make a damn bit of difference. It's always what the game is about inside of it. And eventually, Williams tried everything too. Sometimes to be like economical, once they made a steel cabinet, and then they had to hire body and paint people to fix them when they broke in the field. There were a million problems with short circuits. A lot of fiberglass games, cabinets have been tried, and holes get kicked in them. There's nothing as durable as good 3/4-inch plywood, and T-molding, and I think we got it down to a science there.
The other thing about cabinets is when Nolan did Valley Sente, and I was over there, he thought, oh, you can save all these people money because the way games moved on location is, you know this really well, you take a truck out, you pick up 6 of them, you drive them around and move them around. And Nolan said, well, we'll just make a cartridge and replaceable controls and stuff, and then they only have to carry that. So they built these, I don't know if you remember the original System 1 Sentai games. They were, you could drop them off a truck and they'd probably survive. And so the whole idea was, do we do that? And then we'd go out and watch, and people were buying lots of games still. They weren't buying upgrades. And we asked why, and they said, well, when we want to move it, we just pick the game up and move it over there. Because they hired these guys that's what they knew how to do. They knew how to get in a truck, take a game, put it on a truck, and move it. So they never used the durable cabinet that was supposed to last a long time. And shortly after that, Sentai games became particle board,
The original refrigerator cabinet you say is indestructible. Some of the people here had one that they were trying to get rid of some years ago, and they took 3 drops off the top of a building to collapse it.
We actually, there was one internal Atari video, if you remember, played at the Christmas party.
Oh, the day Atari, yeah.
The quality control, where there's a joke as part of this internal video. The game did get dropped off a 3-story building, and I can say that one did not survive.
It was empty. It was empty, but it did broke in a lot more pieces than we ever expected it to. I helped film that.
Somebody right here? Oh, go ahead.
I know Atari licensed a lot of Namco games. How did that come about, and did you pick and choose which ones you wanted to license?
Well, at one point in time, Namco basically owned Atari. I'm trying to remember.
Well, that earlier part.
The first one was Joe Robbins, right? He went over and got a license to Pac-Man, right? Going up consumer.
For consumer.
For consumer.
No, but they showed it to us and why not give us an option on it? And all the engineers said,
And Robbins, to settle the dispute we have with Namco, we're going to just drop him as a distributor, and he comes back and cut a deal with them. And we paid them $1 million, and we got the rights for this game called Pac-Man for consumer. And Joe got fired for doing that, I think. And Pac-Man was, I think, the biggest cartridge we ever sold.
But for Coin Up, what it was like, what were they? Dig Dug?
Well, Dig Dug, which I worked on Dig Dug as I took
Dig Dug, Pole Position, other games.
We were shown early days.
Xevious.
But we were shown early days, we were shown Space Invaders and Dig Dug.
But Pac-Man and Coin Up, marketing said, nah, that's a stupid game. We don't want
So
it.
did engineering.
So Midway got it.
What's the question?
Early Namco games that we licensed to Atari, like Pac-Man, we turned down and Midway got, and then we did Xevious, Pole Position, Dig Dug, at TX1.
The first Atari one I'll remember, F1. It was an electromechanical projection driving game. And before that, Namco was our distributor in Japan.
And if you remember,
they had a habit of maybe building more product than they licensed payments covered.
With Breakout. I think we sold maybe 1,000 Breakouts around the world, and none in Japan. It was really strange. And then we had somebody going over to Japan, and the place was full of them. And so we never quite understood how that happened.
But we were guilty of that, because he said F1, and I was told I was told to build Sebring, which was the electronic version of that, in the world's largest sit-in cabinet.
But some of the copies were so good. The Italians were copying Breakout, and we went over. Yeah, but most people just copied it. The original Breakout, since it was designed back in when Atari was in Moscato,
73,
had the address 14600 Winchester Boulevard in Moscato on the glass.
Right.
When the Italians copied it, they were very considerate. They updated the address on the Italian to Sunnyvale, California. So you could tell the Italian copy because it had the correct address.
But Atari was so worried about that they used to instruct us as programmers to try to, and we built a lot of software to try to make it non-copyable. Because what they would do is they copy it and take the name Atari off the screen. There are a lot of great stories revolving that. Most of you probably know the Tempest. What happened in Tempest, there's ways you can get it to do some weird stuff and the store goes crazy. And that's because just before it went out, Dave Toyer moved the name Atari over just a little bit. And then his check to see if Atari was still on the screen didn't find it. And so that's what happened. So the score hits. And when I did Tube Chase, which became Tunnel Hunt, which became all these different games that wouldn't die, when they finally sold, they originally tried to sell it to Exidy, and Exidy said, "Can you take the name off the screen?" And I went, "No." Because I don't remember where all these 30 things that checked for it were. So it had to say, originally it said Exidy licensed by Atari, then it went to Centauri licensed by Atari, because if I took the name off, I knew it was going to crash.
Al actually had the first experience with that, you might share. Your trip to Japan, when we got so tricky and you were trying to get one of the games around Japan.
To stop